Welcome, everybody, to Freelance Writing Direct. I'm your host, Estelle Erasmus, the author of Writing That Gets Noticed, Find Your Voice, Become a Better Storyteller, Get Published, which was named by Poets and Writers a best book for writers. Every week, I speak with novelists, with authors, with writers of every niche to talk about their tips, their tricks, their strategies, and how the sauce is made, including creative advice. I'll talk about essays and articles and share my own experience from 3 decades of publishing. So join me every week and grow your business and build your craft with Freelance Writing Direct. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. And follow along on Substack, where I share special clips for subscribers only at estelleserasmus.substack.com. Welcome, everybody, to Freelance Writing Direct, and I'm thrilled to be welcoming new listeners and viewers to the program. And I have news to share. Freelance Writing Direct has won the 2025 Podcast of the Year Award in the education category from the American Writing Awards. And I'm thrilled to be able to continue to share my guests' wisdom and advice, as well as my own hard-won knowledge in the field. I also wanted to share with you that I'm thrilled to be teaching an 8-week writing course this summer for NYU School of Professional Studies. It'll run from June 4th through August 13th, and it's called Writing About Your Life Through Memoir, Essays, and Articles. And we'll meet live on Zoom every Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., so you can join from wherever you are. And so the idea is, whether you're writing your life story, reigniting a long-held passion, or looking to sharpen your craft, this course offers strategies, tools, and inspiration to help you relaunch your creativity and turn your personal experiences into compelling stories. You'll learn how to write in a way that gets you and your story noticed. And you'll learn how to attract the attention of editors and agents and find out who the key gatekeepers are in the publishing world. Throughout our 8 weeks together, you'll spark new writing, get actionable, encouraging feedback, and become part of a vibrant community. We'll dive deep into the art of memoir, how to transform personal memories into powerful narratives, how to write with emotional honesty, and how to thoughtfully address representing real people on the page. You'll understand structure, learn about revision, and the current publishing landscape. Each week, you'll write, revise, and build momentum toward a project that reflects your voice and vision. We'll also cover breaking through writer's block, using micro-memoir as a portal into longer work, building a compelling story arc, pitching and breaking into online and print publications, conducting research and interviews, and gaining insight from editors and agents who focus on the midlife and beyond markets. To learn more, sign up, visit my website, estelleserasmus.com, and you'll also find the link to the NYU course in my show notes. And don't miss this webinar that I'm doing for Writer's Digest on April 24th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm leading a webinar called Layering Through Lines and Timelines into Your Essays and Books to Pack a Punch. It's going to be generative, interactive, and full of craft-focused strategies to elevate your writing. And if you're wondering whether the course is the right fit, please email me at freelancewritingdirect@gmail.com or through Substack. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Freelance Writing Direct. I'm your host, Estelle Erasmus, and today I'm really happy to have Joëlle Delbourgo with us. And she is president of Joëlle Delbourgo Associates, a boutique literary agency founded in 1999. She represents a broad range of adult nonfiction and fiction. Her authors include New York Times bestselling and award-winning novelist Ben H. Winters, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Debbie Cenziper, and Dale Russakoff, award-winning educator Michele Borba, who I adore, the late Dr. Susan Forward, and many memoirists, historians, true crime writers, and novelists. And she is a former senior executive at HarperCollins and Ballantine Books. And Joelle has a master's in literature from Columbia University and graduated from Williams College. And I always do my little deep dive into people. And I know Joelle, but I found that she had on Publishers Marketplace 570 deals, which she tells me is just not even all of them. So welcome to the program. So great to have you here.
I'm so delighted to be here with you, Estelle. It's really fun.
And we first connected through dear Michele Borba, Thrivers on Selfie, such a fabulous author and a person who's an expert that I've interviewed for several of my stories for the New York Times and the Washington Post when I was writing about parenting. And then we met through Michele, and then we also saw each other at different events. So it's just been wonderful to kind of be in your world and see you. And I'm so glad that we're talking today because I think you have so much to offer writers in terms of what they need to do to get their writing noticed and get noticed by a literary agent.
I'm always happy to share my own experiences, although every agent is different.
Absolutely. Yes, every agent is different. And that's a great segue because every agent is different. And so every agent focuses on what they're interested in when they're getting submitted to. What gets you going? What kind of books are you looking for? And then we'll talk about some of your latest deals as well.
Sure, sure. Well, I think I'm a bit of a Renaissance person. I've always been like an avid lifelong learner. And so my interests are actually quite wide, but I do love in nonfiction really substantive, meaty books that shed new light on a subject, present new research, new insights, books that are paradigm shifting, that sort of help move the needle. I like to feel that we're helping to contribute to culture and knowledge. And so I look for authors who've been obsessed with a particular subject or been thinking about a particular question for a very long time. And the book that emerges comes out of all that rumination and all that research and is usually, to me, very, very interesting and something I think that audiences need. So that's true for a lot of nonfiction. I'll try to give you some examples. I mean, you mentioned Dr. Susan Forward, who no longer is with us, but she was a brilliant psychologist whose work went to like very dark, taboo kind of subjects. I originally was her editor when I was at HarperCollins with a book called Emotional Blackmail. She wrote other books with these very strong titles like Toxic Parents. And then I sold her book to HarperCollins after I became an agent that was called Mothers Who Can't Love. I mean, you know, these are just subjects that are so arresting. And she combined not only the deep psychological credentials, but the compassion and connection with her patients. And so she had wonderful patient stories that sort of brought all the research and insights to life. And interestingly, that book, Emotional Blackmail, there's hardly a week that goes by that I don't get a request for translation somewhere in the world. It continues to live on, even though the author is no longer with us. So I love things like that. But I also love a newer author of mine, James Renner, who is probably best known for a book called True Crime Addict. He's been an investigative reporter, obsessed with true crime since he was a teenager. And in True Crime Addict, he explains his compulsion, tells incredible stories of some of the unsolved crimes that obsess him, but also weaves in a memoir aspect. And in his newest book, Scout Camp, he goes inside the Boy Scouts of America with a very, very explosive, disturbing, and dark story. But again, he's a character in the story. Part of what he's reporting is based on research, but part of it is also based on his own personal traumatic experience within the Boy Scouts. So to me, these kinds of books are really unique. And so I asked myself the question in nonfiction, could this book only have been written by this author? And then in fiction, I look for voice, I look for style. I have to be arrested from the first sentence, the first paragraph, the first chapter, the quality of the storytelling, the originality of the voice, the perspective. Again, something unique, something fresh. Some of the authors I'm particularly excited that I'm working with currently are a writing team, Audrey Balazza and Emily Harding. They're very funny, very witty, and they're writing modern retellings of Jane Austen stories. They've come out with two, and the third one will be coming out this fall from Simon & Schuster. And they're just smart and funny, and they really get Jane Austen, and they're also best friends. And so you can almost see that relationship, that fun fuels their fiction. Marilyn Simon Rothstein is one of my authors. She's a hilarious lady who writes what we call dramedy. They're stories set usually in a sort of Connecticut type setting where she lives, and they involve sisters and mothers and daughters and grandmothers and relationships and infidelity and, sort of filled with just wonderful observations about the human condition. They're funny, but there's always a lot of heart and there's always a real plot to propel the story. I'm very open. I have actually very literary tastes, although I do very commercial fiction. And I'm also open to other genres. I'm a great mystery reader. I would love to discover another Anne Cleeves, who I'm reading right now because I'm obsessed with the show Shetland that are based on her novels. Shetland is the TV series, but Anne Cleeves is the author who created the series of novels that the TV series is based on. Very atmospheric. They're set on the Shetland Islands. They take you to a world that you really don't know. Insiders, outsiders, what's it like to live in a place like that? And what are some of the dark secrets that in a place where you think everybody knows everybody emerge and propel, in some cases, terrible crimes. I'd love to find something like that. I love cozy mysteries.
Can you explain what cozy mystery is? Because I know it's been used a lot in the vernacular, and I'm not sure a lot of people understand what that means.
Well, they're usually set in a really sort of sweet kind of setting, a knitting club, a bookstore, and there's either a character that emerges out of that setting, but they're sort of contained. They're contained in a world that seems on the outside to be kind of cozy, sweet, safe, but things are happening that are troubling in that world. And there's usually a protagonist that comes out of that world that becomes the detective. It's hard to come up with a fresh new take on the cozy mystery, but they're very popular.
So it sounds like what you like is it has to have depth to it, right? The project has to have depth. If it's that underlying secret or something dark or hidden or mysterious, whether it's ripped from the headlines and it's a true story or has elements of that. But even the Jane Austen is like a retelling of some things. And Jane Austen has dark notes to it as well. Do you ever go with just something very light and rom-com-y, or is it more
Well, they really are actually rom-coms. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
And actually one of the team, Emily, has a novel that's going to come out in a few months called How Freaking Romantic, which is totally like a fun, fresh, contemporary rom-com set in New York. So I think what I really go for, Estelle, is excellence. And that's what I would encourage, whoever's listening to this podcast, is whatever it is that you're writing, it's not so much about the genre. It could be horror, it could be romantasy, it could be history, it could be psychology, it could be business, but it needs to be excellent. And you need to really put the work in to get it to that level before you present it to an agent.
That's great advice. And absolutely, I'm a big advocate that people have to continue building their craft, whatever they're doing. So in terms of somebody getting your attention, For nonfiction, the idea is always a proposal, right? And we can talk about that. And then for fiction, my understanding is most people want to see the full manuscript because fiction is all in the execution. Am I correct in assuming that's what you're looking for? And can you expand on each?
Yeah, absolutely. So nonfiction is generally sold on the basis of a proposal and sample chapters. And the sample chapters are actually really important too. The proposal I think of as, it sounds very dry, but it's almost like the business plan for the book. It's the distillation of, what is the essence of the book? Who are you and why are you uniquely qualified to write this particular book? You need to really understand how to distill the sort of through line of whatever the book is that you're writing, how to present that. And there are many, many very, very good guides to how to write a winning proposal. I really encourage people to buy several of them. Some of them actually contain sample proposals. There are sales comparisons. In other words, what is this book like that's in the market? There's usually a marketing plan. What do you plan to do to help to sell the book? What organizations do you belong to that might be potentially interested in buying the book? What are the websites that your reader might be part of? Publishers want to know that you, the author, not only have a great idea, have a sense of what the structure of that idea is, chapter by chapter, but that you know who the audience is, you know where the audience resides, you have some ideas about how to reach that audience. Because when you think about it, when I was, for example, in my last corporate position, I was editor-in-chief of HarperCollins Trade Division. I was responsible with my editors for 125 books a year. Each of those books is completely individual. Each of those books needs to connect with a completely different set of audiences. And it's a lot
Yes.
of work for the publisher. So the more of that thought process that you can put on the page in the proposal, the better your chances of getting an agent and then also eventually a publisher. So all of those things go into the proposal, but then we also want to get a sense of what's the experience of reading this book going to be like. So I usually like to see 2 to 3 sample chapters, and they're not usually the first 3 chapters. One might be from the beginning, one might be from the middle, one might be toward the end. You want to show the different sort of components of the book. So the introduction, for example, might sort of set the book up, but chapter 8 might show us some of the storytelling. That's something, obviously, once you have an agent, you'll work on refining all of that. But that's what we generally like to see. With memoir and fiction, we want to be sure you're going to be able to sustain whatever the premise of the novel is. Will the plot really hold up? Will there be tension? Will there be enough character development? How are you setting the scene? How are you creating the atmosphere? We can only tell that if we read the entire thing. And that goes for memoir as well, because memoir also has a complete narrative arc. So unless you're very well known, generally memoir is also sold on the basis of a full manuscript.
That's what my understanding is. And also, I'm somebody who's working on memoir right now, and I feel like it's still evolving. I don't quite know where it's going. I mean, it's going in different interesting directions, but I'm not sure yet. So I don't think I could write a proposal yet until I've written more of the memoir. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. I mean, my one piece of advice for memoir writers is you don't have to tell us your whole life story.
Right.
I think the best memoirs are thematic. They take a slice of your life. They take a theme from your life. It might be about early childhood growing up with trauma. It might be about your relationship to alcohol because you've had a lifelong relationship with alcohol. What is the theme? So your memoir doesn't have to be the only book you're ever going to write about your life. And you need to think also, where is it going to get shelved in the bookstore? Like, there isn't actually a memoir section. There's usually a biography section.
Mhm.
And if you go into that section, you'll see a lot of very well-known, prominent people, either a TikTok star or a Hollywood celebrity or a political person writing a memoir. So it's hard to kind of put in that category. And that's where the theme and the subject matter can help you get shelved in a particular place.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Well, I told you a little bit about True Crime Addict, which was all about James Renner's obsession with true crime. He is known as a true crime writer, and he went on to write books about specific cases that he's trying to solve, but True Crime Addict will be in the true crime section along with those other investigative books. If you're writing about your grandmother who was a Holocaust survivor, then that's going to go in the section of history and Holocaust remembrance. You need to think about where that book might get shelved.
Interesting.
Whether it's a digital shelf or a physical shelf in a bookstore.
And so is there red flags that you just look at? I know you have to be captured from the first page, but is there other red flags that you're just like, yeah, this is just not going to work for me?
Well, the quality of the query letter, I know you probably hear endlessly about the query letter, and it's so frustrating. But the quality of the query letter tells me a lot about the writer. If the writer has taken a lot of care to write that query letter, and again, there are reams of books and articles written, and even on my own website, delborgo.com, there is very extensive advice about submission, do's and don'ts. So the query letter, if it's poorly written, or if the submission guideline of a particular agency are not followed in the query letter, it immediately goes into rejection or no answer. And it sounds very cruel because it's just our time is so limited. We have to make very quick decisions when we're eyeballing these query letters about which ones we're going to read, and then are we going to read further. In the query letter, I want you to get my attention right away. I want to know exactly what the subject matter is right away. And I want to know who you are pretty quickly in that query letter as well. And sometimes people try to get my attention by saying, I'm writing to you because I know you represent X and Y, which is a good technique. But then the X and Y have to make sense. I mean, they have to actually relate to what you're writing about. So don't do something forced. If you don't know what you're talking about, don't do it. Write in your own authentic voice. I want to hear the voice of the writer. And one of the things that gets my attention is I'm always interested in, where is this book coming from? Why are you compelled to write this book? So in your query letter, I think it's really a great idea if you can tell me a little story about how the book comes to be, because that's where I'm going to feel your passion, your connection to the subject. And if that's interesting, I'm going to want to know more.
I love that. It's funny, a little story from mine when I had been at the Atlanta Writers Conference and I had met Georgia Hughes at New World Library. She gave me an award for like the best manuscript. You had to give like 20 pages from your proposal. And so I got the award and she said, but what's missing in here is your little story of why you, and I thought, oh, well, maybe they didn't want to know. And it really was important to her to know the genesis of it. And so it really made me realize, I thought, oh no, it's too much about me. But no, you're writing a book. It is about you.
It is about
So
you.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, we want to know who's speaking to us.
Yes, yes. And Georgia just let me know, by the way, that she is retiring.
Very sad, great lady, but I
Such
guess.
a great lady, such a great experience for me for publishing my book, and what a team. And I sent her a letter, but under her leadership, helming this team, it was such a wonderful experience for me. So
Well,
yeah,
and I will say they did a wonderful job packaging your book. I mean, it's a great title. I love the
thank you.
cover design. That's so important, having that partnership where your publisher gets you. They get you.
You're right. You're saying that, and it's so true. And I do want to thank you for early conversations with me when I was first thinking even about doing this. It really just helped focus me. So again, your advice is so invaluable, and another reason why I want to share you with my audience, because you have such a wealth of experience. I always say I have experience on both sides of the publishing wall as a magazine editor and also as a journalist and writing teacher. And you have the other side of the wall being in the actual publishing trenches on a very high level. And that really informs your knowledge and how you're able to guide the people that you're working with. And I know Michele absolutely adores you, Michele Borba.
That is so true. I mean, and for your audience, every agent comes to agenting through a different path. Some
Yeah.
people start working in an agency and they work their way up. which is great. There's no one path that's better than the other. Some have been on the publishing side, maybe in sales or marketing, in my case, in editorial. And I started at the bottom. I was an editorial assistant. I apprenticed with two fabulous editors in my first job at Bantam Books. I made my way up the ladder at Ballantine Books, where I spent a very long time, and then at HarperCollins. And so the result is, for me, I am an editorially driven agent. Which is, I think, why I'm so sensitive to the quality of the written word, because I am a trained editor. But at the same time, I have sat in every meeting and forum that the editor I'm selling to will be in, right? So I've talked to the art director, I've talked to the production people, I've presented at the sales conference, interfaced with the marketing department, et cetera. And I think even though it's been a while since I've been on that side of the desk, those fundamentals haven't really changed that much. And so it gives me a lot of insight. I think a lot of people think that being an agent, it's all about getting you that publisher. And it's obviously a critical task, because if we don't sell your book, we'll never know what could have happened with that book. But really, what I try to do is work in tandem with my authors every step of the way, first to get them that sale and hopefully make a perfect match for them, but then to guide them through that process. There are many, many, many hurdles, as you know, Estelle, having gone through it, many stages to getting to the finished book, and then beyond, making sure that book is sold and promoted and re-promoted and maybe revised 5 years from now, 7 years from now. And so in my most successful relationships, such as with somebody like Michele Borba or my historian, Philip Freeman, these are authors who've been with me 20 years. We have been together figuring out what's the right next subject. Is it the moment? In Philip's case, at one point, he's a historian who writes about the classics, sort of the ancient world. He's a classicist. But one day he wanted to write a mystery series about a nun in Celtic times in the very early days of Christianity. And they were really like fantastic and adorable. And I sold them for him. But we had to figure out strategically, is it the right moment for you to do this? And if so, do we go back to your traditional publisher, or do we go to a different publisher with the fiction? So there are a lot of moments in a writing career where you're going to want somebody by your side. And ideally, if you have a good relationship with your agent, they're going to travel that journey with you.
I love that you're saying that. So you're not just like looking for that one book, because people have multitudes. They contain multitudes, especially a writer, especially someone who is used to interfacing with the public. They usually want to do other things. So I love that you're sharing that. And so I'm getting a sense of how your communication is with them. Is it something like you're saying to them, like, if you want to rant to me at 3 a.m, you can call me? Or is it more like, call me on business hours, but I'll be available?
I have boundaries. I have boundaries. In fact, I really don't like people to email me on weekends or holidays. This just happened recently where I said to somebody, I'm going to be away for a few days. Send me the revised proposal on February 12th. Well, guess what? On February 10th, my client emails me the proposal. I know you're away, but I had to get it off my desk and get it onto yours. I'm like, I asked you, please send it to me on the 12th. So I'm actually, I think, very accessible. I'm great about responding to email most of the time, unless I just missed it. And I'm always up for a phone call. I love Zoom. I think it's really a godsend. And I have clients all over the world. I have people in Australia, in Israel, in Europe. The video component is almost as good as meeting in person. But I do have boundaries. And at 5:30, I close the door to my home office where I work most of the time. And I do not go back into that office.
No, I think you need that for your own self-care. It's definitely important. I want to just go through, because I went to Publishers Marketplace, as I said, and I just want to read a couple of your recent sales. So one is The Power of Collaboration. Former Walt Disney Imagineering creative executive and storyteller Tricia Cerrone, and CEO of Global Talent Builders Edward J. Van Leeuwen. The Power of Collaboration, sharing a roadmap to building stronger leaders, happier teams, and big results in an increasingly competitive marketplace. And that was to Rowman and Littlefield, and it sold at auction.
It's sold to Bloomsbury. Rowman and Littlefield was acquired by Bloomsbury.
Bloomsbury, isn't that the original publisher of J.K. Rowling of the Harry
Yeah,
Potter
and they are
series?
also the publisher of Sarah J. Maas. They are a fabulous publisher, and I've known them since they were created more than 25 years ago. And I'm thrilled that they've acquired Rowman and Littlefield, and very happy to be working with them on this big nonfiction business book.
Yeah, that's a great that that has that nonfiction hold on that market. And then segue to a graphic novel that you sold in January. Edgar Award winning author Ben H. Winter Street. Three Strange Children, following three siblings who were teenagers when their father was convicted for a series of terrible murders. Now adults, they're drawn into the investigation when a copycat killer begins paying homage to their father's crime, unless he was innocent and the whole story of their lives is wrong. And you sold that to Ani Press in an exclusive submission for publication in spring 2027. And then I'm not going to read all of them, but then The Marriage Bed, it's fiction, it's a novel. And so that was Blair, sold to Blair, and then a nonfiction parenting book. So you are a Renaissance agent. And then Beyond the Pink, nonfiction health medicine from the head of medical breast oncology at the Valley Mount Sinai and clinical assistant professor of medicine at Kent School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. And then, of course, the one that you mentioned before, Anne of Avenue A, and they're the authors of Emma of 83rd Street and Elizabeth of East Hampton. And this is the reimagining of Persuasion.
Yes, they're all very different.
Very different. So that will give people hope because it's not just one genre, it's not just one niche. It's really, as you said, the excellence in the writing, in the presenting of the proposal is what's going to get your attention. I love that.
And I think, one thing that your audience might just want to know and understand, and we know this, but I think it bears saying, which is every agent has only so much capacity. I have a pretty full roster of people, so I can afford to be very choosy about what I do. And every agent has certain things that just excite them, or maybe they've never had a chance to do a certain kind of thing, like the graphic novel. Let's just go there for a moment. That's an ongoing relationship that I have with Ben H. Winters. He's an Edgar Award-winning mystery writer, but also has won the top science fiction award. And he writes these sort of genre-bending, genre-blending thrillers. And he's been a New York Times bestselling author. He's really brilliant. But he also is a genius at writing for television. He had a background as an actor and a playwright. He's great with dialogue. So I've also sold 4 Audible originals for him. And now he's beginning to work with Ani Press. He's doing comic books that are multiple segment stories that then grow into a graphic novel. And he's got that versatility. So I'm not an expert in selling graphic novels, so don't fault me with graphic novels, but it's part of my journey with Ben. So it's really, really fun. Similarly, if I have an author like Michele Borba, she came out with a children's book recently. So she's an educator. She's known in the parenting world. She wrote these fantastic books, The Big Book of Parenting Solutions, Thrivers, on Selfie. So she collaborated with a well-known children's book writer to write a little children's book that takes some of the kinds of ideas that are in her adult books and brings them into the children's book world. And so I like to go also where my authors are going, unless it's something I'm not comfortable with. And this brings me to the more serious point. When an agent turns your project down, it may not be because it's not good. It is all about fit. It has to be the fit, the right project at the right time. And I know that's really hard to figure out when you're on the outside looking in, but don't take those rejections so much to heart unless the agent offers you some real substantive advice, which most of the time they don't. But when they do, if they say the voice didn't capture me, or the story began to flag in the middle, it didn't feel authentic, or whatever it is, that's advice you can start paying attention to. And if you see that you're getting similar comments from a couple of people, then that tells you the work isn't ready. Go back and do some more.
That's great advice. I know they're saying right now, romantasy is the big thing. There's always like a big thing. But the fact of the matter is, if somebody focuses on what the trend is now, by the time something is published, it's like 1.5, 2 year process. So the trend may be gone. I don't think it's a good idea to just focus on whatever the trend is. What are your thoughts on that you could share?
Oh, no, I completely agree with you, Estelle. I think you've got to write what your heart tells you to write. Now, sometimes your heart tells you to write something that there's no market for, and that's kind of devastating. But we all have stories within us, right? And there's an urgency in telling certain of those stories, I think, for real writers. And you might be somebody who's going to launch a trend. We don't know that. So be aware of the things that are really not selling. For example, don't write a Western. I don't think that's a good idea. But don't just jump on the romantasy bandwagon unless that's your love and your passion and you've always wanted to write something like that. Because whatever it is that's inside of you is the thing you're going to write the best. And so tell the story you're compelled to write.
That's beautiful advice. That is. Now, I want to ask, how can people get in contact with you? Are you on Query Tracker? Are you on Manuscript Wish List? Or is it just go to your website and the submission info will be there? And I will share it in the show notes.
It's very detailed on my website, but I am on Manuscript Wish List, and I think I just updated it recently, and they're moving to Blue Sky. I think Blue Sky is a great place to be. I also have a Facebook page for my own personal, but the better place to go is my company Facebook page for Joëlle Delbourgo Associates. And I report on all kinds of things that are happening with my author's books every day, just about. Whatever agent you're interested in connecting with, find where they are and follow them and get a little bit of a feel for them, and you'll do a better job when you do reach out and connect. And then you can always write to me, joelle@delbourgo.com. You just have to spell my name correctly.
Joelle.
Yes.
Delbourgo. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. And also, if you just type in my name, it'll take you right to the website. So
perfect. Well, this has been wonderful. And I thank you so much for everything that you shared here today.
Oh, you're very welcome, Estelle. And for your audience, I really wish you well. I wish you luck. We agents are actually really looking for you. No matter how full a list an agent has, there's always that desire to discover a great new talent. So we're waiting for you.
Yay. That's great, inspiring last words for our discussion. Thank you. Follow me at EstelleErasmus.com on my website and on social media, which is Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Estelle S. Erasmus. And we're now on YouTube for Freelance Writing Direct. Follow along, and soon everyone will be reading what you're writing.